Senate Republicans are trying to bridge differences over the latest version of their health care bill. Health care is one of the issues CBS News contributor Frank Luntz discussed with a bipartisan group of Congress members. The group included 3 senators and 9 representatives. 6 were Democrats and 6 were Republicans. The wide-ranging conversation included a discussion about the ongoing Russia investigation.
I have to raise one issue because it's timely. It's the issue of Russia and what we are learning. What should we know, and what don't we need to know?
And I think we all have bipartisan support and respect for Bob Mueller.
Yeah, I work for Mueller in the Justice Department. He has the utmost integrity. It's in his hands. He will do a thorough investigation. I have every confidence in that investigation. But I will tell you that I think most of us in this room agree that there should be a consequence to Crimea being annexed, Ukraine being invaded, the Russians interfering in our democracy, and we will have, Frank, a Russian sanctions bill against Russia on the floor of the House, I hope, in the very, very near future.
I want to hear that. That's good.
So how many of you agree with what the chairman just said? Raise your hands. So we have, actually, on Russia, we have bipartisanship.
Well, the only person who disagrees with the chairman is the president. Yeah. And while he disagrees with it, he's running down NATO, he's running down the European Union, and Putin couldn't ask for a better friend than that.
That's become too much of an issue as to what our real job is. And if we're not looking at somehow to make this economy dynamic and robust again and getting people back to work, if we're more concentrating on the Russians interfering with our elections as opposed to the Russians interfering with our economy right now, and us turning away from our real job of getting people back to work, seeing wages rise again, seeing families be able to be together.
But Congressman, look, we come here week after week after week, with respect, week after week after week, and do nothing. We don't pass any legislation. We don't walk and chew gum at the same time. The American people expect us to do that. The Russians attacked our elections. We need to respond to the Russians. And we need to do the work you're talking about on the economy. We need to do both.
Let's take the issue of health care. The Republicans demonized Obamacare, and the Democrats are demonizing the Republican legislation. Is that the way we should be discussing what may be the most important issue you will deal with this year?
Some of us probably have philosophical differences. I believe that if you live in America, you've got a right to affordable quality health care. And I think probably everybody agrees on that value. And the difference is, how do you get us there?
I can speak recently. There was no outreach to Democrats in the House to work together. So it wasn't a matter of saying, here's what we're doing, and you're either on board or you're not. There was not a significant, meaningful effort made from the beginning saying, hey, let's put our heads together and try to work this out.
The challenge that we here on these issues, these jugular issues, is a Republican alternative or a Democrat solution. The American people aren't concerned about labels. They want to know about their health care. People want to know, what are my co-pays? How will I take my child to the doctor? What does it look like if I can't afford it? If we're not answering those basic questions, and if we cannot find a point to rally around, it's our fault.
So the next big issue is going to be tax reform. Are we going to get it? Is there going to be any bipartisanship there?
Right now, I don't see it happening. I don't see it happening. A lot of big issues out there we need to address. We need to respond to some of the business taxes, corporate taxes.
So you've set a litmus test already, and it hasn't even begun to be. But isn't that the problem?
Well, you're talking about values, okay? So in principles, philosophical principles that we have. So I think a lot of us would agree tax code needs to be simplified.
You guys all agree with that?
No question.
Yes or no? Yeah. Show of hands. Who agrees that you need to simplify the? Okay. So maybe we can get there.
I got a room full of senators responding to my question. This is really cool. I got to tell you.
Don't get used to it.
Okay.
Can this function?
Absolutely. I think the point is about having respect. And here in this body in Congress, yes, it stems from having relationships. It stems from having an authentic respect for our colleagues, whether we agree or disagree on one issue or almost all issues, because that's what people want from Washington.
And Frank Luntz joins us now from Providence, Rhode Island. Frank, good morning. A Gallup poll has the approval of Congress right now at 20%. Anything you heard yesterday to indicate that there is room for progress on any of these ideas?
Yeah, there are 2 members that you didn't include in that clip that said very important things. Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia talked about not campaigning against his colleagues. That how can you govern in a non-election year if you are attacking people in an election year and attacking them personally? And several of those people there said, you know what, that's a great idea. And Brian Mast, the new congressman, the freshman from Florida, talked about the sacrifice of armed services, of our men and women in uniform, and how members of Congress need to understand and appreciate that sacrifice, and how they need to work together just like our armed services do, where you put aside all differences because you have one mission. I have to acknowledge, you guys focused on the issues, but for most of the conversation, they talked in principles, and for the most part, these Democrats and these Republicans do agree. And they talked about how the media took sound bites to focus on where they disagree rather than what unifies them.
But Frank, principles are very important. No one doubts that. But the bottom line is they have to come together on the issues, and they're not.
But if you focus only on the differences, and you had that vote that you're showing right there.
Well, we didn't focus on the differences. They all said they could come together on Russia.
But there are other issues. I just don't think it's appropriate to constantly focus on where they disagree without also acknowledging, like Russia, and there are other issues that they talked about, where these people, these men and women, are doing the best they can to find common ground when their constituents are all riled up, when the country is seriously polarized. All Congress is a reflection of the American people, and I ought to know, because that's what I'm doing every single day across the country, much of it for CBS.
Frank, how are
Go ahead.
How are they doing the best they can? Let's get off of Russia for a second and talk about health care. One recent poll shows it as the lowest rated passage of any sort of bill in 30 years. I mean, you've got Republicans who's in charge of everything in Washington who can't get together and come up with a bill that has any sort of approval rating amongst Republicans.
And then you have the same thing on the Democratic side. The Republicans demonized Obamacare as it was going through the process. Democrats are doing exactly the same thing to the Republicans. I agree with you. But if you focused on Russia, so you went right to health care. If you focused on Russia, you saw 12 out of 12 members said that the investigation being conducted by the former FBI director, Mueller, that investigation, they will accept the findings, and in fact, they want to wait till that investigation is done. All 12 members raised their hand and said, yes, this is something we need to do, and they all support sanctions against Russia.
We saw that.
That is a place where they came together, and that is pretty powerful. But you're focused on the place where they came apart. It's just interesting that I would note that to you all. In the hour and 10 minutes, they agreed with more than they disagreed with.
Well, these aren't trivial issues that we're focusing on, Frank, but we appreciate your time in the group. Thank you.
Thank you.